April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Children depend on every single caring adult in our community to make sure they are safe from sexual harm. Keeping them safe not just in April, but every day. Whether you're a parent, a guardian, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, or a caregiver, we ask that you take just 3 hours out of your busy schedule to learn what you can do to make sure the precious children in your life are protected. They are worth it. Join the SCARS certified adults by simply visiting our website to sign up for a free SCARS training session. Learn about online and body safety, how to protect them, and how to respond if they are harmed. This information is vital to their well-being and their future. Because they are children, it is our responsibility, Bermuda, to protect them. Visit scarsbermuda.com and learn what you can do to help the child in your life stay safe.
This episode of Survivor Hour has been graciously sponsored by the QBE Foundation, creating strong, resilient, and inclusive communities.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Ray Rivers, a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and the founder and executive director of SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. And this is Survivor Hour. I want to begin by thanking our sponsor, our generous sponsor, QBE Foundation. Thank you, QBE, for believing in our mission and supporting our cause. Our show this evening is called The Mama Bear and the Papa Bear Effect. You know, when we think about mama bears, we think about strong, aggressively protective mothers. I liken it to bears that are notoriously violent and aggressive when confronting a threat to their cubs. A mama bear is usually timid and reserved, but she changes to a straight-up mama bear if you so much as look at her cubs the wrong way. You know, when I Googled personality of a mama bear, they were described as affectionate, protective, devoted, strict, sensitive, and attentive with their young. Why should they be attentive? Because as I've learned all too well, sadly, there are people out there that can harm our babies. Mama bears will fight anything if it gets near her cub. Mama bears are loyal, and they're ready to defend one's child against any perceived, or any cub against any perceived threat or challenge. But I don't want to diminish the importance of papa bears. Believe me, they too will fight to protect their cubs. Papa bears are fierce protectors and figures of strength. They are meant to provide security to their cubs. I want you to picture a bear guarding its den, standing between his family and any threat. You know, when it comes to the protection of our children from predators, this is when we need to respond as a mama bear or a papa bear. On set tonight, we have two incredible mama bears, advocates whose hearts are huge for their children and for other children. You know, Kelly Hunt is on set with us tonight, and she is the executive director of the Coalition for the Protection of Children. The Coalition for the Protection of Children, their mission in Bermuda is to heighten public awareness of children's issues, advocate on behalf of families, and provide services which address critical but unmet needs. Also joining us at the table, I'm really excited, is Adrienne Simeone. Adrienne is the founder of a nonprofit in the United States. And take a guess what it's called. Yep, the Mama Bear Effect. The impetus for this episode this evening. The Mama Bear Effect is a nonprofit organization in the United States. It was established in 2013, and their goal is to change the way people think, talk, and respond to child sexual abuse. They empower adults to protect children from sexual abuse by raising awareness and by sharing prevention education. When preparing for this show, the initial intention was to call it Mama Bear, the Mama Bear Effect, and to have all Mama Bears sitting at the table. But then I thought, you know what? We cannot exclude those Papa Bears. And one in particular came to my mind, and that's Inspector Kenton Trott, Detective Inspector Kenton Trott from the Vulnerable Persons Unit of the Bermuda Police Service. And I am so grateful also that that Kenton will be joining us here tonight. I'm also joined at the table by Dr. Alicia Hancock. Those who tune into this show regularly know that Dr. Hancock is our resident expert in the field of psychology, and she's also a valued board member of SCARS. So welcome, everyone. I want to start with Adrienne, who's flown in all the way from Boston with her family, visiting us and visiting Bermuda. But I wanted you to share with our audience, Adrienne, all about you and the organization you founded called the Mama Bear Effect.
Yeah, so I founded the Mama Bear Effect. I had started it in 2012 as a social media project. I myself am a survivor of child sexual abuse, and it was really something that I just tried my best not to think about, really, for a really long time. So I just didn't really think about it. I felt like it was an isolated thing that had happened to me, and I was not aware of the extent in which it affects children around the world. So it wasn't really until I became a mother in 2009, and I had 2 kids, that I felt really, really sensitive to the issues of children. So if I saw a story about a child being abused, it just really affected me strongly, just making that connection myself with children and seeing how innocent and vulnerable and how much protection they deserve. So I kind of fell down a rabbit hole. I say a lot of the time, I was reading a story about a child pornography ring being busted, and it just really broke my heart. And so I kind of had that moment of, do I want to do something about this, or do I want to just let this pain subside and just live, go on with my life? And for me personally, I'd always been looking for my purpose in life. And as I started doing more research, and then I found the prevalence rates of child sexual abuse being estimated to be 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men conservatively affected by sexual abuse, I was shocked and really just curious as to why we could have such a serious issue affecting children and not have more awareness and not have more education about this. And so as I kind of dug in more and more and more, and I found out there was actually a lot of great information out there for people to learn how to protect kids, but I kind of realized it was also too, people are afraid to talk about this issue, and there's a lot of taboo and there's a lot of silence. And I have a background in marketing and entrepreneurship. I'm not a social worker, I'm not a therapist or anything like that, but I do see this as a communication challenge of how do we get people to want to learn and talk about something that makes them uncomfortable. And so I leaned into that Mama Bear Effect message. Someone had actually said to me, like earlier that year, about how she was picking up her child at preschool and there was someone smoking outside of the building. And she was like, normally I would not have said anything to somebody, but she was like, there are children walking around, and why should this person be smoking cigarettes in front of children? So she's like, that mama bear came out of me. And so that just kind of stuck in my head of like, that is like such a great message to lean on, is that yes, there are things in life that are going to make us scared and uncomfortable, but we have to set our priorities straight and we got to focus on what's important. So I wanted to kind of take this issue that makes people scared and makes people feel uncomfortable and turn it into something empowering. Mm-hmm. That I do this because I care so much about my children and I can do hard things. And so, it started as a social media project. I would create short messages to post on Facebook and things like that. And then it quickly turned into people reaching out, how can I raise awareness in my community? What resources do you have for me? And I was just like, oh my gosh, there was like a real response to people wanting this information, which was so exciting. So within 4 months, I had founded a corporation to become a nonprofit. And I think, God's put a lot of people in my path to make a lot of this possible, which has been amazing. And so that's kind of what happened. Mama Bear, we really focused on the parent education piece. I feel parents are frontline defenders for children. So there weren't a lot of resources necessarily geared towards parents. It was a lot of community-focused or child-focused. But I myself as a parent and knowing other parents, how can we educate and protect our families so that we don't have to wait until our kids get that education elsewhere? What can I be doing from the very beginning? And so, we've created an educational website which is full of pretty much anything a parent would need to know about the issues of child sexual abuse, and then free resources and low-cost resources that we sell or will donate to other organizations that are working to raise awareness in their communities. So That's kind of how we've gotten here today. I mean, it's been 13 years and I'm still just as passionate now. I wish I wasn't as tired at the end of the day. I wish I could still stay up till 11, 12 o'clock doing this stuff, but there are never enough hours in the day.
Yeah, there really isn't. And I think that's exactly how SCARS found you 13 years ago, your book. You had written a book, My Body is Special, Private and Special, or Special and Private. And Helen and I found it, loved it, and ordered it, and took it to our SAFE presentations, and would encourage our parents at our PTA presentations to rent them out for free and go home and read to their kids. And that was where our first connection was with the Mama Bear Effect. So thank you for what you do. What do you think are some misconceptions regarding this issue, regarding child sexual abuse? What are some of the misconceptions?
I think a lot of people feel that it's something that they can't prevent. They feel like it's that there are just people out there and they're so sneaky that you would never be able to do something to protect your children. When, as we were saying before the show started, a lot of these people are weak. They prey upon children because they're looking for easy targets. So even just having conversations about this issue and just, normalizing talking about it, I think can absolutely deter people. 100%. And it also empowers other people to be more vigilant and more aware. There's all these little situations where we trust people, and trust is not a bad thing. There are people who say, you can't trust anyone. It's like, well, no, trust is an essential part of living a healthy life. I don't want to put my kids in a bubble and say you can never go anywhere. But, Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So we need to do things to verify the trust that we're giving people, having conversations with our kids after they've spent time with other people. If someone's behavior models an inappropriate or unsafe, behavior, what can we say to them about that? Like if someone asks a child to innocently keep a secret, having the courage to say, you know what, we don't have our kids keep secrets because that can, put them at risk for abuse, things like that. But I think one of the biggest things too, when I look at effective prevention, is a lot of people are very uncomfortable and have misconceptions about how much is perpetrated by children. And so when we think about how much we could prevent by addressing child-on-child sexual abuse, there is so much potential in teaching children healthy, respectful, consensual behaviors, giving other kids privacy, being respectful for their personal space. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sex talk. It can be very much just respecting other people's personal boundaries.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to have those conversations because they think it's the sex talk. But unfortunately, as kids get older, we know they're exposed to so much inappropriate content. It's even more important now for us to prepare our kids for the things they might be exposed to and say, you know what, a lot of it's not appropriate. You're going to see a lot of inappropriate stuff. That's not what I would want you to be doing. And I wouldn't want people doing that kind of stuff to you. So it has to be intentional.
Yes.
Good parenting doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And, speaking about educating our children, I want to bring Kelly into this conversation. I'd like you to talk to us about the Coalition for the Protection of Children and your programs.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the work that everyone here does. So at CPC, the Coalition, which is a very long name, we teach Safety Matters, which is the preventative education program, and it's 5 safety rules. And the underlying theme of that entire thing, whether it's P1, which is very basic and developmentally appropriate, and just really you are special. In P1, it's you're so special and so unique that no one should hurt you on purpose, and if they do, you tell a safe adult. So throughout, up until P6, it's really about, it's an adult's responsibility. So whatever happens, we're empowering our children with information, but at the end of the day, if something happens and you spot a red flag or, something isn't feeling right, you go and tell your safe adult, and that person follows those 5 safety rules. So we teach them about their personal information, and we teach them about, their bodies. And we also go into other forms of abuse, not just sexual, but it really is about understanding the different types of things that are not okay, and it's okay for it not to be okay, and to put your hand up and to speak up. and to be safe. And back to sort of the misconceptions, I feel like the stranger danger idea is really important, that we ensure that children know it's not just strangers that are dangerous. It's anyone who doesn't follow these rules, anyone who violates those codes that we're teaching you from a young stage. So,
And what are the 5 rules? Share with the audience the 5
there are
rules.
spot red flags.
Right.
There know what's up.
Yep.
And so that's sort of their personal information. Their parents in the U.S., this is a U.S.-based program that we've culturalized for Bermuda, but there would be like, having a password when somebody picks you up. So it's not just like, oh, your mom or your mom told me to come get you. You have that code. It's make a move to know that there are options. So that's the third one. Talk it up is if any of those things happen and you spot a red flag, or like I said, something doesn't feel good, you have identified at the beginning of the program who's going to follow, who's your safe adult. And hopefully you have more than one, but if we just need one. And then at the end of it all, the 5th rule, and very important, is no blame, no shame. So if something did happen and you do hear something throughout the course of the training, then it's not your fault. And that, because we never want children to feel like, oh, wow, that happened to me, but, now I can't talk about it. Now I can't tell anyone because, there's that shame that everybody understands is really so intertwined with any form of abuse, and particularly sexual as well. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for the work you do, and you're in all of the schools, I hope.
yes. Well, we haven't trained as many as SCARS just yet, but we're over 3,000 students.
Wow.
So
That's huge.
Yes, and it really does vary because, like I said, P1 is very basic, but by P6, I mean, we're talking about sexting. We're talking about these images, and unfortunately, an obscene number of particularly girls, but also boys, have been asked by peers to send them inappropriate photographs, and that is perpetuating, and getting out to persons that it shouldn't get out to. So just protecting those boundaries, like you said, it's really important to get there really young.
Yeah, and how do we empower our adults and our caregivers in our children's lives to create an environment that's safe? Like, what do we, because if a child thinks that their safe person is someone that really isn't safe, because we know that predators can be very tricky, you're obviously giving them the tools to know what does not safe look like. Obviously with somebody, right, not making them feel uncomfortable, or somebody touching them in their private parts. Do you get that deep into the program a little bit in the sexual part?
It depends on their age
Right.
and stuff. But, talk it up is really, you're talking about it until you're heard, until you're listened to.
Love
So
it.
if that person that you thought might be a safe adult doesn't believe you or doesn't listen, then you find another safe adult. And it's really important that you make sure that your voice is heard in that.
I love that.
And I think to add on to that, one of the things that we talk to parents is having a body safety check-in.
Yeah.
So creating these opportunities for these kids to have this conversation, so the onus isn't on the child to make a disclosure, but the parent creates these opportunities to talk about things that might be a little uncomfortable. So usually a lot of times they'll say, like, have it at bedtime. They want to talk anyway. They don't want to go to sleep. They want a water and an extra hug. And, they forgot 5 things that they told you, wanted to tell you. So like if parents, they work in tandem, right? So if kids have the understanding that these things need to be disclosed, and then parents are empowered to have those conversations, it can support that disclosure. So a lot of the research has shown is that children are seeking that supportive adult that kind of creates that opportunity and initiates the conversation. Sometimes they might have, if a parent has a suspicion, they might need to be very frank and ask that question. Has someone ever broken a body safety rule? Has someone ever touched your privates? Has someone ever asked you to take pictures?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they can feel it, and it's like the parent is almost, or the adult is afraid because they almost don't want it to be true.
Yeah.
Right.
They kind of get to that point, and then they pull back and they ask that really important question.
Yeah, and reacting responsibly.
Well, and kids can pick up on if adults are uncomfortable, which means they're going to retreat and say nothing. So.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For parents to be
They'll test the waters. They'll say one little thing and they'll see how the parent responds, and then they're like, nope, this isn't a good thing for me to be talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe the work that SCARS does in the community is training adults how to react responsibly and preparing for them. Because when they come in the classroom, they're like, some are like, I don't know. But once you empower them and say, this is how we react responsibly, thanks to the Darkness to Light organization who created the training we provide to Bermuda, you're able to know in advance, okay, I know I have to stay calm. I know I have to thank them for telling me. Right? I know that I have to say they did the right thing by telling me, that it wasn't their fault. They did not cause this, is helping the parents know how to react, because that's huge in that moment, right?
They really do need that script because they have no practice with this.
No, and they shouldn't have to have any practice, right? But I'd like to now speak to Inspector Trott. Thank you so much for coming on. I called and he was like, yes, and it was like last minute. And this is an advocate in our community for the children of Bermuda, I can assure you. I've seen it. What role do you think that fathers and men play as it relates to prevention of child sexual abuse?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. Nice to see everybody again. I think one of the biggest thing, and it's almost how you mentioned it in your introduction, the mama bear and papa bear effect. I think when it comes to men, generally speaking, they're seen as taller, stronger, more protective. That just generally speaking. So I think one of the important things is for our children to know that they can feel safe with us and also comfortable with us. Typically speaking, if we're going back to traditional rules, a man was seen as more, not aggressive, but more strong, more rigid, more yes, no. If you get in trouble, you wait till your dad gets to him. If you look, wait till your dad gets to him. But it has to be an important balance, because men are also required to be very emotional and very sensitive and very calm. So even me, I talk about it all the time. I have 3 children myself. And one of the things that I do so that I'm not so tall and macho is because I have a 5-year-old, so his 5-year-old height. So I go down on my knees to talk to him and talk about something. Because if not, I'm way up here, his way down there, and it's almost like I'm not a small guy. So your big dad is talking to you about something. So I always go down on my knees or sit down in a chair so that we can talk face to face. So I think the Papa Bear effect is, yes, the protective. You need to, you activate that, but your children should feel safe and comfortable with you and not be afraid of you. They want to talk to you. They want to tell you things. Yes. They want to think. And even like you were saying, the time that they want to talk is at bedtime. So I try to have those conversations with them. And I try to give an extra like 10 minutes because I know it's always going to be, oh, daddy this, oh, daddy that, oh, yeah, daddy this. But you want to be able to make sure to give time and space to have those conversations, no matter where you are.
Yes.
And it's so important, and it's just mind-boggling how things have changed now, even societally, where men are seen as also providing emotional support, not just protection, not just physical, not just financial, but emotional support for children as well, because they need that balance.
Yeah. Yes. And years ago, we didn't see that. The man was out raising the money, working, and it was all left really on the woman, on the mother, or the female in the house to bring that part of it, the emotional part of it. Yeah. But I think do you think we have enough men out there speaking up against child sexual abuse and being really advocates for prevention? Do you think we could use more men, more male voices?
We can always use more. It can never be enough, because I don't think that we can ever have enough conversations about it. And it's hard because in our society, we're a small society, so some things are still considered taboo. I think somebody mentioned it earlier. So we have to make sure to have those conversations in a safe way. I give presentations to school, obviously in my role in VPU, give presentations to parents, because I've been a part of organizations since 2018, specifically about how to educate children and parents. We're giving presentations at PTAs just to make sure because sometimes a lot of parents just don't know because they don't want it to be them. So they choose to say, okay, nah, everything is fine. That's not going to happen. But so they, instead of talking about it, to prevent it from happening. They would rather not talk about it, because if you don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist.
Right.
So I think that's why these conversations are important. So we could use more advocates, men, more advocates, women, more just people, period, to do. And I think the organizations are doing are awesome, because, everybody knows you can't do anything with children unless your SCAR's trained. If anything, the CPC coalition, that's been around since forever. When I was a child, right? Sheila Cooper coming to my school and talking to us. So, you know what I mean? So those organizations have been so important, and we need to continue to have these conversations so that people are aware. Yes, the risk is there, but we can do things to prevent it. But it's going to take all of us.
Yeah, because you made a good comment as we were driving here, Adrian, about men. Remember we were talking about needing more voices, and
Yeah, so I think, when women talk about something, it's kind of considered more of a women's issue. And when men talk about it, and women, it's a human issue. And I think a lot of men feel, we did a research study on parental perspectives of child sexual abuse prevention, and women spent more time educating themselves than men on this issue. What was interesting, though, is that the men that took the survey were more confident that their children could be protected than the women were, but yet the men did less research. So it's like, if they had a little bit more education, a little more understanding, we also understand, and this is true as well, that historically men felt that women were the ones that should be giving that messaging to children. But we know how important it is for a boy or a daughter to hear it from their father or another male, figure in their life. And I do believe, too, that the people that commit these types of crimes and think these kinds of things, especially when you think about child pornography, a lot of people may view images of child sexual abuse and don't necessarily commit physical crimes, but that's still a crime in itself.
It is.
So how many people out there are viewing that kind of content and think it's okay? So for men to speak up and say, this is not okay, I think the people who are perpetrating those types of crimes need to hear that.
They do.
They need to hear, this is not a victimless crime, and real men would never do that to children. They would protect children.
I love that, and that's exactly right. Because we know there's a spillover effect, right, Dr. Hancock? With this issue, when a child is abused, or when a family, don't have the tools, or don't react responsibly, or stand up for the relative or the person in that child's life. We've learned that over the years, how that can, negatively affect a victim.
Absolutely. The silence is just paralyzing to the entire family. And so you imagine the victim themselves is just, their whole life is affected for the rest of their life unless they get some help or get some support.
Yeah, and reacting responsibly is key, because I've heard, honestly, and just this week, so many stories of people years ago. We did not have the prevention education. We didn't have the tools, and people didn't react responsibly. And as one victim said to me, it was almost worse than the abuse itself, was the way people responded. And so we want to equip our parents and our men and women in our community to learn as much as they can about this, and talk to their children, talk to their own children about body safety. Talk to us about the 5 protective objectives, because I read about that on your website, and I'd love you to share with our audience about the 5 protective objectives.
Yeah, so these are, and actually I don't have them in front of me, but these are the things that adults should know to understand how to protect children from sexual abuse. So understanding the issues, understanding how sexual abuse is perpetrated. It's not a stranger danger issue. Having conversations with your children to empower them. And this goes throughout their entire childhood and even early adulthood. A lot of people, I think that once your child is, say 10, that, they understand what these things are. I don't need to keep talking about it. But statistically, we know that actually the highest risk of sexual assault through your entire life is actually around age 14. So this is the age where a lot of kids have more independence, more exposure to other peers and adults. A lot of kids nowadays have smart devices by that point, and they're on social media and games and things like that. So we're really kind of throwing them out there into the big wide world and, neglecting that piece, that these are still children. Their brain is 10 years away from full development, maybe even more. So to imagine putting that kind of responsibility on a child, and even when I talk to teenagers, they'll still kind of have that victim blaming mentality of, why would they let someone do that? Like, why would they, So it's like even they themselves don't understand why their peer wouldn't speak up or why their peer would let something to continue. So I think it's really important to engage in that age group. But, having conversations with other adults, like we've said, just working together. Whenever I'd like meet another parent of a child who was friends with my child and would want to play date, and I have the benefit of saying to them, I run this organization, here's some materials, right? And then most of the time they'd be like, I'm so excited. I've always wanted to learn about this. I never knew where to start. And then all of a sudden we're working together, because now if my child's playing over their house, they're like checking in. If they're playing in a separate room, they know if they're having like a family party or a gathering, someone needs to check in on the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when we talk about like a word, a safe word, I encourage this too for family events and parties. Like if something happens and you need to get the attention of your parent, but you don't want to be like, hey, I'm ringing a bell, something really scary happened. Like have a code word or a phrase like, Mom, I need my medicine. And that means like, I need to talk to you about something, but I don't want to talk to you about it in front of everybody else. So it gives them, or even if they text it or they call, whatever it is, they can, if they're at a friend's house at a sleepover, they can say to the parent, can you call my mom? I forgot my medicine. And it's like, it doesn't call any negative attention to the child.
Yeah.
The parent, what are they going to say? No? They're going to be like, okay, let me get your parent on the phone.
Yeah.
And so, creating opportunities to allow kids to ask for help without, removing the discomfort of having these kinds of conversations.
And the fear.
Because it's a really challenging thing to expect a child to speak up for themselves. I don't know, what were the other points of objectives?
Well, one of the points you had made on your website was knowing when not to be polite, when it's okay to not be polite. And I think that's
Let's talk about that.
Kids, because obviously we teach kids, you're supposed to be polite, it's respectful to adults.
Yeah.
And there's obviously times like this when that gets thrown out the window.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say I struggle with this even as a human being myself. Mm-hmm. I seek to be an agreeable human being. I don't like conflict. I don't enjoy it. But doing this work, I've become like a lightning rod, where it's like all of a sudden I see things happening and I'm like, shoot, I gotta speak up. I'm gonna hate this, and the person's gonna hate me. And it happens all the time. But it happens. But when you do it, the more you do it, the more resilient you become. Yep. And you're like, I survived this, right? And this is what I try to tell my kids. Like, we're gonna go through hard things. It's gonna be a little uncomfortable sometimes because we're gonna get out of our comfort zone. But you're gonna be okay. And we need to create these experiences where we go through these hard conversations.
Yeah.
But we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
We're like, remind yourselves, I'm the grown-up. Grown-ups do hard things.
Yeah.
We're doing these hard things so kids don't have to do hard things.
And we may offend the grandmother or the older aunt or that generation that was like, if I ask my granddaughter for a hug, she better give me a hug.
Right.
And I've had, I've been admonished for teaching that. And what do you mean? You're telling me not to give I want a hug, I'm going to give a hug. And I'm like, yeah, but will your granddaughter be able to say no when she's not with you to somebody who she doesn't feel safe around? You want to give her the ability to say, it's okay if I don't feel like a hug today. But by saying, get over here and give me a hug, children are being told they have to do no matter what an adult tells them to do, even if it's something they don't feel comfortable when it comes to their body. Kelly?
Well, it's one of the best messages in SCAR's training. I feel like it's better to offend an adult than to sacrifice a child.
Correct.
Yep. It's uncomfortable and you're like, for some more than others, but definitely, we're there to protect them. And so we have to. And, for children who maybe, to your point, should be sort of seen and not heard in certain circles and cultures, teaching them certain things that, no, you absolutely speak up. Even if mommy likes Uncle so-and-so, or, this is daddy's friend, or it doesn't matter. Like, these are the rules, and they don't change. So I think the sooner, again, the better they understand that those are them.
Yeah, it's a little sore subject when it comes to, what other family members expect of our children. And it's really hard. I have people talk about it all the time. Like, I wish you could talk to my in-laws or my, grandparents or my aunts and uncles because they don't understand it. I'm like, send them to a SCARS training. Yeah. They'll figure it out real quick, the risk of forcing children to do things they don't want to do. If they're tickling, please, audience, if a child is telling you they're done, they don't want to be tickled anymore, please be respectful and don't be tickling them anymore.
Well, parenting is not an all or nothing. So, just because we teach children to be able to have their own personal space boundaries, it doesn't generalize that they can do what they want for everything else. I think some people believe that, well, if you let them have, their own way with this, then, that means that, they're going to be able to do whatever they want to do. That's
I'm never going to change their diaper. I'm never going to wear a seatbelt. Like, come on, let's be reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of times it's the relative themselves that wants that hug, that feels like, right? Like, and you're still going to be loved if they don't hug you. Like,
well,
it's
and that's
okay.
the thing about affection, though, is like, if it's true affection, the child wants to give it. So you need to wait until the child really wants to give you that hug. And wouldn't it feel better anyway than trying to force it out of the child?
Yeah.
Wait until they come and give it to you, and then you're like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah, that's a real hot topic. I mean,
it is the fear that, like, if we empower children with a voice, if we give them a voice, that they're gonna take over the, like,
or they're never gonna be affectionate ever again in their lives.
Say no to me for everything.
It's like so scary, but it's because it is a relatively modern concept, right? I mean, but definitely, and I think it will make it much more challenging for predators and persons who are grooming to say, wait, this child knows what's up. Like, this is not my target. And the less targets they have, because look, it's not just, and it's not on children, but the adults know what's up. Like, that's just way too difficult. It's like robbing a house with 2 guard dogs. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Just move on to the next one.
Yeah. I mean, I think there has to be a little bit of a mama bear and papa bear in all of us, right? Really letting children know that you are my baby, my cub, whatever. I'm here to protect you, and I'm going to make sure you're protected, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you're protected without scaring them. It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to go crazy on it either and think, like, not trust everybody, like Debbie Ray Rivers does. But, that's not healthy either. Like, it has to be a balance. But I think the most important thing, would you all say, is helping them find their voice, to let them know that I can say no. My voice is important, because as we all heard years ago, children were to be seen and not heard. But their voice is so critically important, to know that they can come and tell us when they're feeling uncomfortable. And I love that. Your book, My Body is Special and Private. I mean, for how old? Like 4-year-olds, right?
2 to 4.
2 to 4.
I wrote this because when I had young children, and there were body safety books out there, but I couldn't find one that was like short and concise and wasn't going to get ripped apart by my kids. So, publishing a board book was really challenging because a lot of places don't print them. You have to pretty much go to China, which was, it took a couple of years to really figure it out. But yeah, it's just an introductory book to just even help parents have these conversations with their toddlers. It just basically says my body is special. It belongs just to me. It helps me do lots of things, but parts of my body are private. And my father, I laugh because he was like, that's so great, you wrote a book. And then it's like, and you have the real names of genitals in it. I'm like, yes, I do, Daddy. This is great. But no, he was really proud of me. But I think for adults who did not use these words when they were growing up and were not comfortable with them, it's like you got to just say it so many times that it doesn't feel weird anymore. Just so your child, and a lot of people are like, that's too young, they don't need to know. And it's like, but they do, because if you start using these little nicknames, they start using them, and then sometimes they're funny, and then someone introduces a new nickname to them, and then before you know it, they don't even know what they're talking about anymore. So I'm sure, as you know, when a child has a disclosure and there's an investigation, if they're using all these different words, or like purse or pocketbook or diamonds or whatever it is, it's very hard to know exactly what a child's talking about. So if they have to go up on a stand, they're like, okay, now you have to interpret what the child means by this.
Correct.
And before you know it, the defense attorney is tearing it apart and making the kid look like they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Do you see that?
No, you're right, and that's a very important thing. I mean, even with my children, I keep talking about them because it's my reference, but even my children, they know that you call it by its correct name. So we have a tendency to, when they're younger, call it pet names and my wee wee or my moo moo, whatever.
Oh yeah, I could write a book on pet names.
Yeah, but like you said, it makes it cute and affectionate. Whereas, hey, this is your penis, this is your vagina, these are your breasts, this is your bottom or buttocks. So having the proper name so that they know, and then they can, if the worst, because we're trying to prevent the worst from happening. But if somebody does try, they can at least say, hey, Daddy, he tried to touch my breast, or he tried to. So instead of you trying to figure it out, and then even if it comes to them having to speak to the police about it, they know exactly what it is and what they're describing.
Yeah.
For their safety more so than anything. But let's forget about the police part. Let's just think about their safety, so they know this is what my body
And it's
part is.
empowering.
It is.
Because if you're teaching them, okay, we can name every other body part that we have, but we can't name that one.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, well, she be, I guess,
Shame.
I don't know how to talk about it.
And it's like, no, that's just like, this is part of who you are, right? And so that empowerment piece is critical, I feel like.
Yeah.
So
And I
why
think
should I
that's,
be ashamed of it?
well, that stuff is generational. Oh, we all called it the Johnson for 3-4 decades. We've been calling it the Johnson, but no, it's the penis. But like you said, Adrian, like the more you say it, the more you're comfortable you're with. It's just like talking about child sexual abuse.
Yep.
It was so taboo we couldn't even call it. We called it interfering. I say it all the time, like, and people are still using that word, and it just gets to me. I'm like, sexual abuse is not interfering. There's a different meaning, right?
Yeah.
But it just gets used to saying it, right? That it's okay to call it sexual violation of a child. It's okay, because I think that also helps in prevention, because when we're tiptoeing around everything.
Of it.
Right.
Because, interfering just sounds like you're minimizing.
Yeah. And we've been doing that way too long when it comes to the sexual violation of children, is minimizing this and being almost afraid of it, really, to call it out. So what are some of your other resources, Adrian? Because you're a wealth of information. I know that. Tell us about your other resources.
Yeah, so I kind of went out on a limb and I just created things to see if people would want to use them. So like we have a set of like rock cards. These are great for like medical centers or for people who have like an organization and they want something very inexpensive to hand out. So this is like an age by age guide talking to infants, like how to protect your toddler from sexual abuse. And then, when your child goes, to elementary school, how do you talk about those types of things? And, because obviously it's an age appropriate conversation. So as your child gets older, you need to educate them about different things, especially in the elementary age, because bribes and tricks and types of things like that, obviously they can understand those things, whereas a toddler wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. Share with the toddler. Can you share a little bit that's on your rack?
Yeah. So, engaging with because again, it's an adult responsibility. So having conversations, because if you have people caring for your child, those people need to be educated about this. Maybe they're not the one perpetrating abuse, but maybe something could be happening within that facility and they're not aware of what they should be looking for. So minimizing one-on-one opportunities, doing your research about the people that you trust or the organizations you're going to be putting your child in. And then beginning, especially too with toddlers, they absolutely love to say no, right?
Yeah.
And I think about my kids, like kids nowadays, they get their picture taken all the time. Like a camera's in their face all the time. And so allowing a child to say, no, I don't want you to take my picture. Yeah.
Yep.
We can do that. We can respect that boundary. Yeah. Pretty much for 6 years, I didn't get a family photo with all my kids because my youngest was so sick of getting her picture taken, she wouldn't do it. What am I going to do? Drag her there and be like, ugh. Yeah. But then giving children, privacy, like even if you're potty training them, close the door a little bit. I'm going to give you 30 seconds of privacy because you're learning to use the potty. Or even if you're, when my kids were young and they had to go in with me, and I would say, it's okay that you're in here with me now, but when you guys get a bit older, I'm going to want my privacy because this is something that people should have privacy.
I love that.
So you kind of have to juggle it, depending on how your family is. If you have, twins that are bathing together, it's okay that you guys are bathing together now, but when it's time to take showers, as kids, and they're going to kind of naturally want that. So I think it's important for parents to tune their ears that if your child's like asking for privacy and you're going, I've seen you all this time naked, it's not a big deal to us, but it's a big deal to them.
Yeah. I love that.
So, and that's one of those things that sometimes people will normalize. They try to normalize nudity or minimize boundaries with privacy. Like, I've heard stories of a step parent saying, nope, you have to leave the door open while you shower because I don't want the steam sticking up in there. You know, I know people who were sexually abused, and it was like someone would normalize just walking around the house naked so that their body it seemed normal to them to be naked. So it's really, the whole privacy thing is really big for us. But one of the biggest tools that I was kind of surprised of, and I'm excited for, was we created this body safety rules magnet, and it's on Amazon, and we sell it on our website. But, you know, it has the body safety rules, you know, using correct names, that, you know, we don't force people to touch each other's bodies. We stop when someone says no. No secrets, things like that. And so I've had parents reach out and say that their child disclosed, and the reason they disclosed was because the magnet was on their fridge.
Wow.
And it was just that reminder to them all the time how important this was. And I've had people that stick it on their front door. I mean, some, you know, because they're like, nope, I don't. I mean, they're braver than me. I'm like, I don't want to offend anybody with the work that I do. But it's like, some people are like, no, I want everybody in my house to know this is serious for me.
Prevention.
Yeah.
That is prevention 101.
Yeah.
Right? Sending that message, like, no, we have body safety rules here, and this is what we expect.
Yeah.
Because a predator, let's be honest, they're not going to groom a child whose parents are paying attention or has that magnet. I can tell you one thing, because the last thing a predator wants to do is get caught and go to jail.
No, they don't want to get caught.
Yep.
And so you want to send that message real clear, like, no, you can think we're paranoid or whatever you want, but my babies are the most important thing to me, and I'm a mama bear or I'm a papa bear, and I'm going to make sure they're protected, right? I mean, even as a policeman, you know, you're already, you know, in that role of protection, right, and of safety, and so you know, your children must look at you already like that, like this is my protector. But we want every child to look at their parent as a mama bear or a papa bear. Every child should have that gift to know that, you know, my mom or my dad are going to stand up for me, and I can tell them anything I want about anyone that's making me feel uncomfortable or doing something in my space. You know, and I think the other conversation is really about what consent looks like, right? You can't have enough conversations around that.
I was say we could have a whole conversation about those teens, and, you know, that population that is unfortunately extremely vulnerable, doesn't necessarily know they're vulnerable, I can say by experience. But and it can be difficult to talk to them, but they are extremely fragile, and they're getting information from their peers and their expectations and what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And even though they might be pushing you away at that stage in life, that is the point where you show up every single day, no matter what, and no matter how they get out. And, you know, it's the time where all those conversations that you're having from a very young age really do sort of kick into a next gear. And it's so critical because they are exploring life, but, you know, or, oh, you know, my friend had somebody sitting outside of school waiting for her, and that's cool, right? You know, these older guys that look around and they're 14, 15, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's my boyfriend. But, you know, and they don't really know that that's absolutely not cool. Like, these are predators.
They're being exploited.
Yeah, and the more we talk about that, and they say it quietly to their friend and their friend, or we just talk about it from an organizational standpoint, like, let's just not forget our extremely vulnerable teens. I just want to maybe have another talk about them, because
and especially too when it's like a teacher or a coach or someone who's in a trusted position, I would say it's normal for a teenager to kind of be gaga over an adult, right?
Yeah.
That should be an expectation of any school or youth thing, that there's going to be kids who are going to be like, oh my gosh, my teacher, I have such a crush on them. It's not normal or appropriate or healthy for that teacher to reciprocate.
100%.
Anyway,
100%.
any adult who's in that role needs to be like, I am an authority figure. I am guiding these children. This is a child. This is not an adult. This is not an opportunity to feed my ego.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of times what happens is they are selfish and they're only thinking of themselves. So, you know, it burns me alive when people say, oh, well, they are old enough. They know what they're doing. I'm like, no, they didn't.
Absolutely.
Because if would you want to have a sexual relationship with someone who's using you for their own selfish desires like that. There's no reciprocation of care.
No,
there's no love
exactly,
there.
exactly.
It's absolutely. And so when we talk about having conversations with our kids at bedtime, I have like 2 teenagers now, so this is a warning for the future. So you put the little ones to bed and you have that 10 minutes, and then you go into your room, and then the teenagers are waiting for you. And then they want to hang out for like a half an hour. And I'll be like so tired. I'll be like, oh God. But I'm like, no, now I'm like, no, I have to do it. I have to hang out with them for 30 minutes, even though I'm exhausted, because they need this time. They need this alone time to talk.
Yeah, that's critical. That's so critical.
The policies that SCARS, talks about, if you are a coach or a tutor or, an adult, a position of trust, you shouldn't be one-on-one necessarily texting. Like, establish the rules of what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. If it's a group text, okay, fine. The team is on there. But if you're just texting,
It should be observable by other adults in an official platform.
Yeah. And our organizations need to make sure they have these policies in there. We've been advocating for that for a decade, saying, please put in your safe policies, have a best practice code of conduct, and have the people who are working in your institutions sign it. Then there's no surprise when you find a text that you shouldn't find, or a parent calls you and says, why did this person send my daughter or son an inappropriate text message? You know that, hey, listen, this is your warning. We've told you, and have those policies in advance. Even gift giving, you want to give a gift to someone on your team, everybody gets a gift. It's not just a gift for one single, right? You can't single them out, because perpetrators are very good at doing that and getting everybody to like them and thinking the best at what they can be. You need your ego stroked? Go in the staff room and get your ego stroked. Don't get it from one of the students or one of the athletes. And I think it's more common than we think. I really do.
I think, there's too many sometimes teachers and coaches, et cetera, that are trying to play a hero complex. They need to have a hero complex.
Yeah. And it can be hard to, I volunteer with kids, so you can see, it's exciting when the kids love, what you're doing and you're great, but like in the same token, I think we need a little humility. We need to remember, that we have a conscience, and it's like we need to exercise our conscience. I think a lot of people, especially people that commit these types of crimes, don't spend the time to actually think about their actions. They kind of put it in a box, and it's like that's a separate person from who the rest of the world sees.
Yeah.
And I think we really need to spend more time, thinking about our actions, and are we living our life the way that we should?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also okay for our youth serving organizations, because let's be real. Like, we need our youth serving organizations. We need music. We need sport. We need church. Some people need faith-based centers. We need schools to teach and inspire and empower kids. Have some behavior policies for kids as well. It's okay to do that, and share it with the parents who children are coming to your organization. Share those policies. This is what we expect. No hanging off the gym teacher or the tennis coach. Understand what your physical touch policy is. Have a good physical touch policy. Have a good transportation policy or travel policy. You got to take kids away. Make sure everybody's safe. Not just the kids, but the people that are working with it, serving your children. Make sure they're safe too. You don't want to put them in harm's way and in a situation, that something could happen. So, even though it is the adult's responsibility, but if everybody has expectations.
So good at prevention. Right? You can't say, oh, I didn't know. If it's signed, it is so. And so everybody's clear. There's no blurry, like, oh, but I just did that. No, but you knew that was this.
Yeah. And remind people as well. Remind people of your policies every now and then. Just don't have a policy in a piece of paper here. Right? That's not, remind them of the policy and say, hey, and check in with your staff every now and then and say, where are we struggling, or maybe we need some more training. Right?
Well, and sometimes too, they've even said, like, make it part of employee reviews. Make it part of the review, or if you have monthly meetings, call someone out who did something, who followed the policy very well.
Yes.
So that way you're rewarding the positive behavior that you want to see.
Yes.
You're calling it out, and you're making sure that it's a priority.
Yeah.
That it's not just a piece of paper that you go read this when you have a chance, because I've been there with organizations. They're like, go ahead, read and sign this. We need you to do that. Like, check the box.
Right.
It's like, no, you need to incorporate it into your organization.
Yes. So it's expected, because I think sometimes organizations are desperate for volunteers. So then they're afraid to have to say, well, you can volunteer, but can you sign this code of conduct? And you got to do SCARS training, and you got to do all this. And they're like, okay, I don't want to do all that. And then they don't get the volunteer, right? So it's a balance to get, I guess, the volunteers. But I think if it's a parent, you would hope that they're going to be glad about that. They're happy about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Prevention is key. I think we could all admit that, we years ago, we didn't have prevention education. We were so embarrassed about this issue. There was so much shame, throwing it under a rug, pretending it doesn't exist, or protecting people, over children. But all of us play a role, and I think it's incumbent on every male and female to be mama bears and papa bears. Even if you're not the father of that child, be a papa bear. Speak up when you see somebody crossing the boundary of a child, and be a mama bear when you see a child. Behavior speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. All we have to do is watch behaviors of kids, right? If they're looking fearful or not wanting to go, check in with them. If they don't want to go to a certain activity. Ask some questions, right? Be proactive. Get SCAR certified. Invite Coalition into your youth serving organization to speak with the children there, and so that they can know what to do. The children speak up and be safe. As Kelly and I always talk about, it's like a 360 approach. We all have a role in making sure that the children in Bermuda and in Boston, thank you so much, are safe. The children around the world are safe. That's just so critically important, right? Because we know the spillover, yep. Dr. Hancock. We know what happens when we don't protect kids, and the scars that are left behind. So I just, on behalf of SCARS, just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you, Adrian, for your time coming here to Bermuda, and while you're here on vacation with your family, to come sit at our table and share your wisdom with us. And thank you, Kelly, for all the work that the Coalition for the Protection of Children do in our country, and all the programs that you offer. And Detective Inspector Trott, thank you. I know you're just a call away, and thank you for being a Papa Bear. And Dr. Hancock, appreciate you more than you know, and your wisdom. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for the QBE Foundation for making this happen, for allowing us to do this work. I came across a quote that made me smile, and I want to share it with you. I may look quiet and reserved, but don't mess with my kids. I'll show you 7 different kinds of crazy. How true is that? I have friends out there watching this show and who will be shaking their heads right now. They can go crazy. You mess with their kids. They are mama bears and daddy bears. As protectors of our babies, we must send a clear message to perpetrators that we are watching, and we will do everything in our power to stop you and hold you accountable. We encourage all the parents and guardians out there, please learn everything that you can about sexual abuse prevention. We have yet to eradicate children from being sexually violated, sadly. Please sign up for one of our Darkness to Light Stewards of Children training sessions if you haven't done so already. There's no cost to you. Thanks to our corporate and community donors, we raise funds in Bermuda so that no Bermuda resident or anyone who works with Bermuda's children must pay to learn how to protect kids. So we're grateful to our corporate and community donors for that. This is free education. scarsbermuda.com. Go to our website and click on the tab, Get Trained. Children rely on parents, guardians, and caregivers to protect them. That's our job as adults. I didn't do it well 20 years ago. I wasn't equipped with the tools and knowledge in understanding that a child molester can be anyone, even a trusted family member. Child molesters are great at grooming children and their families. Remember, 90% of people who commit sexual crimes against children are people we know. They're not strangers. But the great news, everyone, is that child sexual abuse is preventable. Learn what you can do to protect the precious child in your life. To report a case of child sexual abuse in Bermuda, please call Child and Family Services, Kids Hotline at 278-9111, or the Bermuda Police Service at 211. You can also make an anonymous call by dialing 1-800-8477. I want to thank our guests this evening, each and every one of you for your wisdom. We thank our sponsor, QBE Foundation, for partnering with us to improve the lives of children in our Bermuda community. And we thank you for spending the last hour with us. Good night, everyone.
This episode of Survivor Hour has been graciously sponsored by the QBE Foundation, creating strong, resilient, and inclusive communities.
is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Children depend on every single caring adult in our community to make sure they are safe from sexual harm. Keeping them safe not just in April, but every day. Whether you're a parent, a guardian, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, or a caregiver, we ask that you take just 3 hours out of your busy schedule to learn what you can do to make sure the precious children in your life are protected. They are worth it. Join the SCARS certified adults by simply visiting our website to sign up for a free SCARS training session. Learn about online and body safety, how to protect them, and how to respond if they are harmed. This information is vital to their well-being and their future. Because they are children, it is our responsibility, Bermuda, to protect them. Visit scarsbermuda.com and learn what you can do to help the child in your life stay safe.